All right, welcome to Netflix. My name is Katell. I'm language manager here with the globalization team. Our director of globalization, Kathy Rockney, unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. She would have done the introductions, but she couldn't make it tonight. So before we get started, we are going to show you a little video because you're at Netflix, a little film. And that's going to give you an overview of what we do. And then we will go into more details into our efforts and specifically bringing really creative localization at scale to a global audience.
Hi everyone, I'm Meredith Wright. I'm Localization Operations Manager here at Netflix. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the team, the globalization team here at Netflix, a little bit about the numbers, who we are, and then it'll be followed by a little bit more about what we do. The mission here for the Netflix team is to drive globalization to create the best local user experience at scale. And that can mean a whole bunch of different things, but what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the best user experience and that we can make sure that it's creative and gives the right import for that local user, and that we can do it at high volume and in an efficient way. When we're talking about scale, Netflix in 2011 was in English only, and then we launched our first language, which was Canadian French. Now in 2017, we're available in 190 countries. Part of that launch happened in January of 2016. When we launched, we went into 130 different countries at the same time, one global launch. And just thinking about that, we're available almost in all of the countries of the world, with the exception of a few countries. I think you can see it in gray over there. That shall not be mentioned. In terms of scale, we are now, or actually, if I check my watch, we should soon be in have 100 million members. If we think about, thank you. If we look back to about 3 years ago, we had about half of those numbers. We had about 48 million members. So just looking at scale in terms of how quickly we're growing, that gives you a sense of Netflix speed of growth. In addition, about 3 years ago as well, 2014, we were in 14 languages, and now we're actually available in 22 languages, and this quarter we will be we will be adding on 3 additional languages, bringing us to 25. And finally, when we think about originals, Netflix is in actually 300 plus, has 300 plus original titles available on the service. And if we think about 3 years ago or some time ago, we had about 41 originals. So we think about that parabolic growth over a period of time. We've had to look at how we work. We've had to look at how we service what processes we use in order to make sure that we can do this effectively and efficiently. One thing to think about is our global footprint. So we've been talking about, across the board in terms of how many users we have, but right now Netflix has about 48 million international users. So when I was talking to you about previous numbers, we had 48 million total users in 2014, and now that's the total number of current international users. In addition, just in this quarter, 70% of the net add members came from the international. So that was about 3.5 million users joined the service, and they were all coming from abroad. I'm going to pass the microphone to Katell to talk a little bit more about what it is that we localize and how we do it.
Thank you, Meredith. So to dive a little deeper into what we localize, the globalization team specifically is involved in pretty much everything that you see around the product and around our content. First off is the UI. So whether you are an existing member or you want to become a member, as we call a non-member, so people who come to the service and look at, signing up and want to have a little look at what our content is about. The UI on all the devices, the website, of course, but the TV UI and all the mobile devices on tablets and phones. We are involved in the search, of course, when you want to search for content on the service. We also support that, and our internationalization team is deeply involved in this. Navigation on all the devices and A/B test. A/B test at Netflix is done on a global scale. You've probably heard of A/B test, and maybe some of you have been involved in some of it. In a lot of companies that I've worked with, A/B test has been mostly in English in the US. We don't do that. We do it really at scale and globally. So we do A/B test in not necessarily in all the countries at the same time, but we might target a specific market for a particular test. But generally, we do it in multiple language across the globe. Actually, I need the clicker. Metadata is another thing that we are deeply involved with, and in terms of volume of the work that we do is one of the biggest buckets, if you want. So everything that you see in the UI when you're looking at content is touched by our team. Here we've used an example of the Japanese UI because Japan localized everything, while some other markets may decide to keep some of the data in English. But Japanese and a lot of the Asian languages choose to localize everything. So, when you are looking at a piece of content, of course, you have the main title, but also the episodic titles and the season labels, the actual synopses for the season or the show or the movie, the episodes, the ratings. All these things are touched by our team. And we do more. Everything that is around the content until you press the play button, we're involved with. Marketing campaigns, press releases, trailers. We do a lot of work with our customer service team as well. The messaging that you get in your inbox about the service, that's all stuff that we touch as well. Of course, there's the content. We know that people come to Netflix for the content and they want to see brand new, original, and exciting content. Our team in Los Angeles, which is the content localization team, is involved in managing all the subtitling and the dubbing that you have on the content. And then our product creative team manages the creation of the artwork that you see on the service. Our team is specifically involved in the title localization. So a title that you may see on the service may have been either researched by our team and it's an existing IP that already had a translation in certain markets. But in other cases, it's a brand new IP, and we may need to localize this, not always, depending on the languages and the markets. Again, for Asian languages, we're looking a lot more at doing at least transliteration or transcreation. This is all things that we will look at into more details in a little bit.
We're talking a little bit more about the goals of the globalization team here at Netflix. Two of the key focus areas that we have are about scale, and that's for localization and globalization processes here. Part of that is, as well as looking at improving quality for the localized user experience. So those are the two big elements. And just talking a little bit more about that, when we say scale, what does that mean? Well, that can mean using tools and automation. Some of the things that we found is that we need to look at our workflows and ensure that they are smooth and efficient. And where possible, we are looking to create automation or tools to make that workflow even more flexible and even more usable. In addition, we're looking at applying continuous localization processes so that localization is never the long pole in the process, so that translation, as the content is ready, allows us to have it translated immediately. We also have here managing by metrics, and so that allows us to scale because we need to ensure that we know how quickly we're performing, both for our internal localization teams as well as with our language partners. So part of that means developing and iterating on KPIs with those language partners to understand and being clear in terms of the expectations that we have on performance. And part of that is also means we want to ensure that we have got continuous improvement of our workflow, and we're always iterating on that workflow to ensure that it's as efficient and effective as it can be. And finally, quality. That is an ongoing process for Netflix. We talk about quality at scale, and we've got creativity at scale, so we need to ensure. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yep.
Cuts out. We need to ensure that we've got the best quality possible in our processes. So part of that is about ensuring that we are we have world readiness, that we're world ready, that we have educated our internal and external teams about globalization and localization, so that they've set up the localization process in the most effective and efficient manner. In addition, we want to make sure that localization is brought in early in the process so that it's not an afterthought, which creates a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of pain points, which I'm sure many of you have experienced who work in the localization business. And finally, one of the things that we're focusing on is accuracy, consistency, and context. And what that means to us is making sure that we have clear guidelines and criteria that establish what quality means for us. And then we can pass that on to our localization partners and language partners to ensure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we have and what we're aiming toward. So that would mean that we are using, in our case, we're using MQM. We've established that as the quality guidelines that we are looking at, both for the translation quality that comes from any individual language resource, as well as that final product to understand, have we reached the level of excellence that we are looking for in that final product. And now I will introduce Fergal and Waseem to talk a little bit more about the global user experience.
Thanks, Katell. Thank you, Meredith. Hi, everybody. I'm Fergal. I'm part of the Globalization QC team, and this is Waseem here.
Hi, everyone.
And basically, the role of our team is to make sure that the localized end user experience that you have wherever you are around the world is the very, very best that it can be. So let's go on that journey together. So it starts off here. Everybody was here at one stage in your life. We were all non-members at one stage. So basically, you sign up for your free month, and you get ready to go on the journey.
Now, the next step on your journey, it's obviously selecting the plan you need. And what we're looking at here is our plan selection. We're looking at our Korean experience in here. And what we notice, we have the localized aspect of using the local currency, which is the one, and honoring as well the date format. And we do as well that in multiple languages. For Arabic, we do actually honor the RTL, obviously the right to left. We do look at the date format for the local market. And then you're probably going to notice here that we're using the US dollar. And actually, we've done that intentionally because we broadcast Arabic in about 21 countries. And as a general practice for that we actually, in the industry, they do use US dollars for entertainment. And we kept that for the ease of our customers too.
So once you go on past selecting your plan, you obviously want to select your payment method. And again, we want to keep it as local as possible, while at the same time making sure we have the best internationalization support. So this is our Korean offering here. So you can see we offer many, many local variants of credit cards, which is obviously very appealing to our Korean users. And to continue the theme as we go back to our Arabic users, these three main credit cards are the ones which are supported and used most, but at the same time making sure that we keep all our internationalization focus. And again, so just before this happens, like before you land on this page, we bring you through some personalization, which will best identify some of the types of shows that you're interested in. But after that, it's as simple and as quick as that, so you're ready to play. So you're on our landing page here on TVUI, which is one of our big 10-foot UI experiences. You'll see this beautiful UI of a pretty recent show that we did, Abstract. And I want you to kind of look, as we look at our US version, as we move on to our Korean version here, the amount of detail that we have given into this title is amazing. You can see the rich color spectrum is maintained, and the Korean font is beautiful to denote and give us the best experience for this show. And again, in Turkish as well, you can see the color spectrum is there. So it's really trying to engage, it's really trying to appeal to the best local experience in each of the territories that we go into. We don't want it to be an afterthought, we want it to be there first and foremost.
And continue on that, we want to make sure we provide our customers with the best user experience as well. And we've done that in our TV UI for search. We do offer search capabilities in all our UIs. And in TV UI, we have our own on-screen keyboard, OSK. And in this instant here, we are showing the Arabic one, and we're looking for the title house. And we actually do type it, transliterate it as the word house. And as you type, you get type this query, you get the search results right here. And as you notice, we get most of the titles that have the word house in it, and certain kids titles that we have them localized, as in the market there, we don't localize all the titles. Same thing we do offer, and I want to show you the Japanese one. And in this instance, we're using the same query, house. And you can see here how everything as well is to the keyboard that we have all the letters and the alphabets that support our customers, give them the as natural experience as possible to their locale. Now, after you search for all your great shows, you can always add them to your list, and you can as well, you're not going to be able to watch them all at home, and we have launched this great feature that we were very excited about and has got a really good buzz internationally as well, which is download. Therefore, you can watch your favorite shows on your mobile device, on your commute, on your long road trips, and I'm sure a lot of parents here that have used it, or they should use it on their next road trip. Make sure those kids are quiet in the back seat, guys.
So to make sure that we kind of give you, the best experience locally, you'll see in this, and so this is one of our defenders, Iron Fist, the final one. I hope you've seen all four that we just launched last month. But these shows, apart from being fantastic shows, they do have, they're intended for a more mature audience. So I want to just highlight here across 3 different territories that this is in the UK first, that this is most suited for viewers 18 and older, primarily because of the fact there's profane language and there's quite a bit of violence in these shows. So you can see that was in the UK. This is in Korea, again, indicating we partner with the Korean Movie Ratings Board here to make sure that we're perfectly in line with their standards that kind of work with us as well. Again, this is indicating that this is it's definitely not suited to anybody under 18 here. And then finally, when we look at our Dutch offering, which is kind of cool here, apart from the fact that it indicates it's for 16 and older, you can see if you look there, that fist and that aspect coming out of that person's mouth indicates the profane language that's in place. So again, it just really goes to show you, hopefully, the lengths at which we go to really give that best local user experience.
And as reading is important, we want to make sure as well our kids are surfing our UI, and you guys, families, are comfortable making sure they're in a safe profile. And we have great kids profile that you can choose the type of level of the shows they can look at, and plus we do have parental control. But I wanted to show you bring this as well, to show you that even on the kids level, we actually ensure that we have the localized flavor. We use the local character name, the known in that market in a certain way, the artwork, the title of the shows. And we can do as well, again, we're utilizing the Japanese UI. Then you can look at here, there's a lot of effort and detail put in to make sure as well this as user-friendly and localized to the current audience that they're looking at.
And with that, I'm going to hand you over to María and Paolo, who are going to bring you through our originals experience and how we bring them to the world.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Hola. So I'm María Fernanda. I'm the Latam linguist, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the creative localization process for a global audience. So for us, the magic word basically is collaboration. The base here at Netflix for this type of process is having a continuous interaction and bidirectional consultancy with our stakeholders, like PR, social, marketing, product creative, and content localization, as Katell mentioned before. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through some of the example of the translations we do here at Netflix. So the first one that you can see here is the key art for 13 Reasons Why. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's one of our newest shows. It's really cool, and it has a lot of user engagement. So as you can see here, it looks that it's a very simple process because it doesn't have a lot of text. It just has an image, and it has a date, and it just has the title. But actually behind this, there is a very interactive, collaborative effort within different departments at Netflix. So what happened when we receive an original? The first thing we need to think is, are we localizing it or not, right? So it comes to us, Globalization, and then we work with marketing to take that decision. So in some cases, we keep the English because it's short, it's easy to understand. Sometimes we localize it because there is an IP known in the markets and stuff like that. Of course, this decision also depends on each region. Each region has its own set of rules and everything. So here in this case, you can see the Norwegian and the Japanese and the European Spanish key art. So all of them decided to go for the known IP because this is based on a book that is fairly well known in all the regions. And so they went for it. However, for Latam, for instance, and France, the marketing team decided to move away from the book. So basically they wanted to rebrand the whole show, and we kept the name in English. So it's very interesting to see that because this is a show that is targeted for young kids or like millennials or 20-year-olds more or less. So there was a lot of user engagement, and a few hours later, there was tons of fan art, memes everywhere, and it was very interesting to see how the title developed in Latin America. So people call it 13 Reasons Why, and that's how it is. So now's the new title. So we do a lot of banners, other type of key art, and here is an example of one of our biggest global campaigns, which is the Santa Clarita Diet. So, instead of using the normal burger billboard we use for the US, we decided to go hyper-local. So for Spain, we use a lot of pinchos and tapas and things like that, sangrias, and for Germany, we use the sausage. So this is another graphic. This is an example from Trollhunters, which was one of our main titles last year for kids. Not only because Guillermo del Toro was behind it, but also because it was launched during the Christmas season. So here is an example of what we did in Mexico City. So the placements were all around the cities, like in Latin America. So here is Mexico City. This is one of the malls. So I chose this example because it has a mistake. So the date is not properly localized. So, we work with local agencies and we work with the marketing team. And then when this is ready, it comes back to us just to make sure everything is in place. So in this case, the date wasn't, so we turn it back. So.
Una prueba más que se suma a la lista de extraños acontecimientos que demuestran la existencia de seres anómalos. Aconsejo al espectador guardar discreción si tiene hijos menores de edad, ya que las imágenes que presentaremos a continuación pueden ser perturbadoras. Hawkins, Indiana, era un pueblo tranquilo hasta que hace unos días 2 personas desaparecieron misteriosamente, dejando pruebas irrefutables de fenómenos.
Mix between Stranger Things and this guy who was incredibly famous in the 80s and 90s. I don't know if anyone is from Mexico or Latin America, but he was very well known. He had this kind of cheesy supernatural show. So in the spot, he goes to Hawkins and tries to see what happened with Barb and Bill. So we did something similar for Argentina. We have Xuxa, who was actually a very famous Brazilian TV show called Xuxa. You can see 11 the main character watching it.
Hola, bajitos, aquí estoy yo de nuevo con las cartitas de todos ustedes. Ayúdame, chicos, por favor, ayúdame. Chicos, Claudia, Sentate. Claudia, sentate, por favor. Bueno, vamos a ver, esta aquí está bueno, ya está.
This is actually pretty cool because Shusha is reading a letter Joyce sent to her to help her find Bill. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it was crazy. Like, we posted it, and like 2 and 4 hours later, there was like thousands of sharings, like million views, and the media picked it up immediately, like 30 minutes later. So this is like really cool. So the content I showed you is basically what goes beyond the UIs, what goes beyond Netflix, but we still work on it. So now Paolo here is going to talk more about how we scale it, and he's going to showcase some of our internal tools.
Okay, so I know you're all excited to see the tools. It's much more fun, right? Okay, so yeah, teamwork. It's really important, of course, to make sure that we collaborate not only internally with other departments at Netflix, as has been highlighted, but also with all the fantastic people who work with us, freelancers and vendors. We have 16 in-house linguists at Netflix, and we have about 70 freelancers working with us across the world, and 6 vendors or so. So it's a lot of people to coordinate, and we need to really make sure that we all share an understanding of what the style should be, what the terminology should be that we use, and that everybody has the information they need to be able to do their work in the best manner possible. Of course, we use tools that you all are familiar with, like style guides, glossaries, and TMs, but we also have tools that have been developed and are continuously developed by our engineers and continuously improving. This is our Asterix platform. It's a task management and CAT tool at the same time, and it also offers a series of functions that are very specific to our needs. Here you're seeing, as you saw, the part that's for task management, and here you're seeing the CAT tool part, so the editor with concordance search. You can see the different TMs. You can see the matches on the right-hand side. But the reason why we're using this tool is because it is actually very integrated with our backend databases, but also with other tools that allow our collaborators to get the context they need. And also for internal collaboration. As an example, the title localization tool is where we actually keep our proposals for titles, and we interact with marketing team, with product creative, and so you can see here we will enter a proposed title, explain what the artwork should look like, if it needs to have just the localized title or English and the localized title, and so on and so forth. It allows for comments. You can see the history, who said what, when. You can see on the right-hand side where the artwork is underneath. There's a context for those who are called upon to actually attempt at translating these titles. And so this is an example of how we try to make sure that information is shared with everyone. This is called KMP tool. KMP stands for Key Names and Phrases. So it's basically a term-based, a glossary, but it's very specific to the entertainment business. We're talking about names of characters, names of places, or phrases that are recurring in a particular show or a standalone movie. And as you can see, you can select the language, you can add manually translations for these various, or transliterations. It's particularly important, of course, for Asian languages or Arabic. So you can add these translations in different languages for the character names or the place names. Also, there's automation integrated in this. There's a system to actually parse from scripts. So the KMP is generated automatically. So there's a list of words that are actually relevant for this particular show. And then from there, we are manually adding the translations. And so this allows for everybody who's touching a show to have that information. It could be content localization people who are doing subs and dubs, but it can also be, of course, our translators who are translating synopses or episodic titles. And this is the loc reference tool. Again, it's integrated in the Asterisk editor. So when a translator is working on a synopsis or an episodic titles, they can actually watch sections of the videos and search for certain words, select the language they want to see the subtitles in or hear the dubs. And so they can make sure that they are well informed about what words were actually used, what the terminology is. I chose here an example of a show that actually has a different name in Italian because it's called Kazoops in English, which is a random word that's supposed to mean nothing, but in Italian it happens to sound like a swear word. So we had to actually come up with a different name for the show. So you can see how important it is that everybody who's working on this content gets to get this information in a timely manner. And also this tool allows us to expose this information in a secure manner to all the people who work with us without, avoiding leaks of content before release. As you can see, there's a lot of watermarks on that. And with this, I am going to, just one more thing. Sometimes, the tools are great, but sometimes they can't tell us everything that's relevant for a show, and sometimes you actually have to watch the content. As an example, this is from the Get Down. In order to find out how the episodic titles were localized by our content localization team, you have to actually watch the show because the episodic title was actually part of the video. It's in the graffiti on this train, and so you can't search for that in the force narratives, unfortunately. So with this, I'm going to just hand it over to Katell again. Thank you.
So thank you very much for listening to us. I hope this was interesting. We're going to do a Q&A session in a minute, and I will invite anybody from the globalization team here at Netflix to come on stage in a minute, and so they can answer any questions that you guys may have. Before we do that, we want to show you a little trailer. This is a brand new trailer from Kimmy Schmidt season 3 that is coming out later this year. And, you should watch it because it's my favorite show and everybody should need more Kimmy Schmidt in their lives. So we're going to show you this for a minute.
I got my GED. What do I do next?
After high school, most white girls go to college.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to college. Titus, why are you back? It's okay if you got fired. We'll find you another job.
I make my own green.
That's not gonna work.
It will once I get better at drawing ears.
How awesome is this place? Even though they don't have recess. Which is fine. It's fine. Recess is for babies.
I broke up with Bobby, and it was worse than I could have imagined.
Oh no. He killed you and now you're a ghost? I don't want to make sexy pottery with you.
Let me look at these.
Ooh, divorce papers.
Uh-huh, from you know who.
Are they in the mail yet?
I haven't had a chance to sign that thing because nobody in New York uses pens anymore. Everyone just vapes each other now.
Last night I saw Mikey going into his apartment with another man.
Are you sure the other guy was gay?
Everybody's gay, Kimmy. It's the 90s.
Mikey's a good guy. Don't overreact.
I'm not overreacting. I'm lemonading. Hell no, I ain't playing with you, Michael. I'm not fooling with you, Michael.
Hey! Lay off my truck!
Titus?
If you don't give up and you think positive, things will work out.
Before we do this, let's review each other's sexual consent forms.
What is this?
It's what I'm agreeing to let you do to me.
I like you, but I just met you. I'm not gonna... Oh, come on. Thumbs are for hitchhiking and being Fonzie.
Well done, high five!
Yes. So you should binge watch the first 2 seasons if you haven't done it already. The new one is coming out soon. So anybody from the team who wants to come and answer questions? We have a little gizmo here that we can pass around for questions.
All right, who's ready to catch this one, guys? Ready? It's very soft, guys. Don't worry about it.
Don't be shy.
Whoa!
Hello?
Here we go.
I was going to ask, how many people do you have in the localization team, and how large is the budget?
So Do you want to answer, Meredith? Oh, well, the size of the team is about 50 people in the globalization team. That includes project managers and program managers, linguists, internationalization engineers, QC specialists, and we also work very closely with a team of development engineers who are dedicated to us and building the tools that you've seen. And of course, we have a huge team of Shervin, yes. You're recorded now, everybody knows that you're here. And we also have a huge team of freelancers, contractors, and vendors who support us all over the world. Budget, do you want to take that one?
We're probably not going to talk about the budget, but if you have other questions, we're happy to talk about it.
Thank you.
Can you go to the person? Yeah.
Go. Oh, good throw.
Oh!
To just talk into this? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you. So I wanted to ask, how do you work globally with like global teams? Because you do a lot of proactive internationalization, but what about content internationalization? Do you ever source your ideas or you work with people locally for something that you're going to originally produce?
One of the linguists want to talk about that?
Content, I think. The question is about content, the movies and the TV shows? Is that what
Yeah, your original content. If you do any work with local...
We do. Yuka, do you want to take that one? There's a lot in Japan. Put you on the spot there. Come here. Yeah, Japanese local content and original content.
So I'm Japanese linguist.
Yes.
And I'm based in Tokyo because we have Tokyo office and we have marketing team and we have content team. And of course, we do have so many local originals and it goes to over the world. So for me, I try to provide as much context as possible to other linguists so that they can localize into their languages. But usually we use English as a hub language and it goes all over the different languages. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I would maybe just add that we are acquiring licensed content all over the world, and we're also producing local originals in various countries. Some of the biggest titles are probably things like Narcos, Marseille, Club de Cuervos, and 3%, sorry, Brazil, yes, 3%. Las Chicas del Cable is coming out very soon, our first Spanish original. And in Japan, we have quite a few as well. Anime, we have Hibana. There's a lot of stuff being done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi. Do you have or have you had any crowdsourcing initiatives?
Crowdsourcing.
Netflix.
Crowdsourcing we don't use. If you mean, having a platform like kind of Facebook-like and using users, no. Maybe the content localization team. So Joe mentioned the Hermes platform.
You guys have probably heard about the Hermes platform, where we're looking at crowdsourcing of linguists to help with the subtitling and the subtitling process. But that is actually done, a lot of that is done by our sister team down in LA that's in charge of the subtitling and dubbing. But our team is very much focused on working with hand-selected vendors and hand-selected linguists, as well as our internal linguists to support the localization of the product.
About the Hermes platform, I would just wanted to add a piece. There's been a lot of talk about the platforms in the press, and you may have read some articles. The concept behind it is the idea to try to develop the network of translators. There are some languages, maybe the longer tail languages, where there is a small industry and a small pool of specialized translators. And the idea with this platform is to reach out to more people. And also, to make sure that we pay the right rates to the right people doing this job. It's an industry that can be a little tough on the rates on the subtitling side, and we want to make sure we get the best quality and we pay the best price for it.
Directly to the source.
There's a few there.
Throw it over.
Throw it over.
It's soft, guys. It'll bounce.
Whoa, that was good. That's lost on the video.
What's the largest challenge that you guys faced as you started to approach things at a much more scalable level, and how did you tackle that?
It's scale. It's just as you said. It's scale, and the speed at which things move at Netflix is scary, to be honest with you. It's part of the challenge. It's part of why we all love what we're doing here. No week is the same. Most days are not even the same. So we just have to be really, really inventive, really innovative. We have to fine-tune our craft each and every day. We have to try and... We use vendors outside of what we do here, but we really have to try and do it in such an innovative way with our tools, with our people, with our collaboration that just enables us to keep going. Because we have 300 originals right now. Not that long ago we had 5, so it just kind of shows the scale at which we're moving at.
To add to that, and you think about that, in the beginning when it's a smaller scale operation, then each team is able to kind of do things their own way. And as you're growing, you remember I talked about the globalization team goals. The part of it is making sure that all those workflows and processes, when it's 7 teams doing similar things, if you are able to create 1 or 2 processes that all 7 teams can use effectively and efficiently, that's the phase where we're in, and that's been one of the greatest challenges, where we're making it seamless and effective, but not making it too structured and rigid. And that, I would say, is one of the challenges of going global and being more scalable.
If I may add a little bit, so from software side of things, from internationalization, we have a lot of clients, different type, different platform. And before global launch, what we did, a lot of software side, is to make it scale. So for one of the example is called the language selection service that we did. So we centralized the locale negotiation logic at one central place. So when all the client move on to language selection service, so that enables us to turn on this language at one flip and everyone gets it. So that's some of the work our internationalization team has been doing, which actually helped, coupled with all the other scalability work, helped with, us to be able to launch globally at the same time. So one example. Oh, by the way, my name is Sean, and I work at internationalization team as an IT engineer. Thank you.
Whoa.
Hi, guys. Hi, Meredith. Nice guy. So speed, time to market, continuous localization, all of those things. You deal with a lot of emotional content, so how do you handle subjectivity, the subjectiveness of the translations in order to nail it for the market in the speed that you're making it at?
One of the linguists
What's the
want to take
process?
this one? Yeah, I think you should. Definitely.
Who's going to volunteer?
Not putting anybody on the spot there.
Come on, I'm going to pick someone.
Hello. Yeah. Well,
Let's come this way because
yeah,
the video
my name
won't
is
see you.
Carlos Hoyos, and I'm the linguist for Spanish from Spain. So how we deal with subjectiveness? That's a good question. Well, we work with a lot of people. It depends. In our case, we work with a lot of people in the market. In some of our cases, we have freelancers who are there. So they are the ones helping us to understand better what would work better in that market. Then we work with the marketing teams, social teams, and different teams that will help us to, agencies as well in country, will help us to know what is, I think María explained pretty well. We get some feedback back from the market, so that's how we never know if we are doing a good job or not till it goes till it goes out, and then we hear that there will be people that in Twitter will say things that they are bad or good and so on. So.
Nuance is a very important part of our work because, you're talking about artistic intent. A lot of it involves actually having people look at and really understand what is the intent of a piece, of an episode, of a scene. And from there, we try to find the best local solution. And yes, we are chatting back and forth with different people in country to achieve that. It's very intense and a lot of fun. Yeah, we work with people that we trust. So we have to replicate this intent with people that really can follow instructions and can really be curious, know the market, know their language, again and again and again.
Thank you, Susan.
I just want to add one thing to that. People that we trust, and how do we make sure that they gain our trust? Of course, not only because a lot of us internal linguists have handpicked the freelancers or vendors that we work with, but also we do have a LQA program that's developing at this time, and that is, as was mentioned before, that is a way to monitor quality. And we will have quality metrics specific to each vendor, each translator, and so we can, at that point, have a degree of trust that they're doing the work in the way that we intend them to do it. You know, like they're following our style conventions, and they're keeping to the intent, the artistic intent, as Susan said.
Another piece, as we were talking about context, one of the things that we talked about, the growth of the originals from 41 about 3 years ago to 300 plus. Context is huge, and that is definitely a piece that allows for the successful translation, as well as understanding the intent. And what we're trying to do is automate the passage of context from buyer all the way through to the resources who will be doing the translation. And that's been a challenge for us because it's been an organic process. And as with that scale, the number of buyers, the number of people who are bringing those original titles into us has grown exponentially. So we're trying to figure out how do we automate, how do we create a smooth process that will allow that context to flow all the way down to the language resource who's going to be providing the translation to us. So
So because we have so much information that different teams accumulate over the life cycle of a title until launch, there's a new effort now to capture that into a database that would be shared amongst teams so that, again, we try to maximize everybody's knowledge as much as we can. And the final point of that would be to provide it to our freelancers so they have access to all this knowledge when they're making a decision.
Good question, Scott.
Hello. I wanted to ask, what will be your potential for growth? Because you have already grown so fast and covered almost all the countries in the world except for several. And you mentioned original content is one field. And what other fields do you think you're going to include?
Fergal, do you want to take
Well, I mean, just to say, original content is definitely the goal. I mean, this is what will separate us and will always bring the customers to Netflix because of our rich and varied original content. Not just the numbers of 300, but as Katell was saying, we have many, many local originals right now, and that's going to grow profoundly as well as the years going by. But even, as successful as we are right now, we really have just scratched the surface. I mean, we launched globally January 6th last year. But, when you look about countries that, so we've good penetration in countries like North America and a lot of Western Europe, but there's tons of other countries, even in Europe, across Africa, into Asia. We've just scratched the surface. So there's a lot of room to grow there. So there's plenty and plenty of work for us to come, for years to come.
Yep. And it's not only... and it's also, making sure that the question of adding the UI and the product localization in additional languages. As I said, we were in 14 languages a couple of years ago. Now we're in 20, going into 25. And then what are those other languages where we can increase the user experience and make it more local for those users? So that's another place where we can grow.
Hello. So this is a question more about the future of Netflix and translation in general. So we have heard that you have to deal with tons of information. You have to localize in very specific markets. You have very well-trained linguists to do this. I'm wondering whether you see a space to use things like machine learning in the future to help adapting the content. Do you think that's to a mechanic system, or you see some application? Because just one example, and the other day I read that there's this marketing company that uses machine learning algorithms to generate emails or calls to action to their users, and they have gotten better results, according to them, than actual marketing writers. So hopefully that doesn't mean humans are going to be replaced anytime soon, but maybe it's going to be a help. So what do you have to say about that?
So, I mean, machine learning, and you mean machine translation as well, along with that? I mean,
among other things.
Yes. So there are many opportunities for, we talked about creativity, creative localization at scale, but we also have some kinds of content where the level of creativity is not as required. We have tons of help content out there, many of which is not necessarily getting a lot of eyeballs, or is quite technical or quite straightforward language where we don't need the same amount of rigor and attention to it. And that could be that's one of those places where we have an opportunity to use machine translation and not spend the resources time on that content, take advantage of the effectiveness and efficiency of machine translation, and then put those resources elsewhere to more of those titles that require that attention.
Throw the dice to the front. There are a lot of people trying to ask questions.
Sure. Hi. I just wanted to know, do you use different vendors to do the translation for the audio and other vendors to do translation for subtitles? I mean, I love watching your movies in different languages, and I have family coming from abroad, so they enjoy it. But I've noticed that when I have the subtitles and the audio in a different language, in Spanish, sometimes there's a discrepancy,
Yes.
and I just wonder.
So the answer is yes. These are done at the same time for speed reasons, and this is done by a team in LA. We don't have all the details, but we do know that, yes, the goal is not consistency between these two. I mean, there should be consistency, certainly in terms of the name of the characters or any key name and phrases that Paolo was talking about, but the goal is not to be exactly the same. If you are playing a movie or a show in English and you are also having the subs, which I do when I do cooking and I put them on because it's loud, you will see that it matches because it's followed, somebody has typed in those from the dialogue. That is not how it works because simply we don't have the time to do it this way. It has to be done at the same time. So it's different teams working on those at the same time.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to?
Wants to add something?
Oh, Myla, yes.
Also, there are different requirements for dubs and subs. So, for example, the dubbing, they're going to try to match the movement of the lips, especially for countries where the dubbing is very important, like in France or in Spain or Italy, where it's really, really important for the users to make sure that the actors' lips, they sync with the words. And then if you do the subs, then the requirements are different and you want like very short. And so I think that's also why sometimes there are a lot of discrepancies between the two.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Can you throw it the whole way down, please?
Well, she had a question first.
Oh.
Good evening. My name is Melissa, and looking around, I'm probably the youngest person in this room. But I'm a student, and my lifelong passion has always been languages and translation and transcription. So I was wondering, from a student standpoint, what would a company like Netflix look for in somebody that they were going to hire in the future, or something that would benefit my education that would then benefit Netflix?
So from a student standpoint, we love students, but we don't hire interns or junior people generally. That's at least here in Los Gatos. I'm sorry. We are a pretty small company in terms of the number of people, and we have pretty lean teams. And one of the way that we do this is that we hire experienced people who are really experts in their field. So it doesn't mean that, in the future you won't be able to come and work for us, but you'll probably need to gain some experience first. In the globalization space specifically, I would say that, we have a lot of different experiences, in our teams. There are people who come from, have worked on the vendor side and then moved to the buyer side, or the other way around, people with a more technical background. There are people who didn't really work in localization, but were maybe copywriters or journalists. Certainly in our language team, we have some people like that. So there is no specific, experience that I would say. It's not necessarily different from other companies, except, maybe the difference is that we tend to hire a little more experienced people. I don't know if anybody wants to.
I'm an engineer. I want to add something. I have been here for more than 2 years. What I really appreciate is the Netflix culture, and it helps people grow, not only in your current career, but for lifetime. That's my feeling about it. So I would suggest, so regardless wherever you want to work for in the future, look at the Netflix culture deck and work towards that. It's beneficial. It's good. Thanks.
Thank you. Throw it all the way down. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was accurate. I'm going to use that to ask a question, if that's okay. I wanted to ask Waseem in particular, I suppose, and anyone would like to answer about perhaps specific challenges you may have had with moving towards right-to-left languages, which is...
It's for you, Waseem.
I guess that's organically comes here.
Yes.
All right. Right to left, it's by its nature, it's a challenging thing, especially in the industry we're in. It's coming in, and now you're not talking about here strings. You're talking about UI. You're talking about bidirectional. You're talking about providing the best user experience. And the big challenge for Netflix was not how to do a good RTL UI, is how to provide the best RTL UI. Because in the Middle East, in general, all speaking Arabic countries, I can tell that our market lacks a lot of really feeling as a native experience. And that's always our biggest challenge. And we always go to that goal. It's like, how can we provide the best? And we work with great team here, our internationalization team, Sean and Tim, and with our engineers. We work daily on overcoming obstacles and challenges, and you can name it. We did build our RTL codes from scratch, literally. And today, I think we're doing very good. We still have a long way to even get better, but I think we're setting a standard somehow, somewhere. Thank you.
Not just that, but building it from scratch. But Tim and Sean and Dragan here, I've been and done that in other companies before, and it's taken at least a year and a half, 2+ years. The guys did it in 5 months here, which was just phenomenal. Yeah.
And I'm sure Tim and Sean can add something to that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems we had was that, I think this kind of came about probably February 2015, that, hey, we need an RTL UI ready for January 1st or January 6th, 2016. So it gave us probably about 7 or 8 months to get this ready. And, we support a lot of different devices. It's not like we just have one platform. We support pretty much everything at this point. And so, just educating all the developers within Netflix on all these different platforms, how to support RTL on all the different platforms, that was probably the biggest challenge.
I want to also point out that Netflix has the very high concentration of talented people. And we have great engineers across different teams, which definitely helped. Thanks.
Are you moving to the recruitment team? Or?
I just want to share with you all, like, it is important to set a goal. And when I joined 2 years ago, I thought it's impossible because what we're doing are CJK, which is the first Asian languages, plus the first right to left languages. And it's just, have never been done before in such short time. So, but we did pull it off, which I found, very rewarding. Thanks.
It was awesome. So a couple more questions, maybe?
Down the front here, the
okay.
second row has been waiting for 15 minutes.
These guys have been waiting for a long time.
Oops. Sorry. I have a question about the Netflix original. So there's some original show like Narcos. There are a lot of Spanish, right? So I'm wondering if you guys translated based on the Spanish or English, or do you have the 2 copies of script when it's in the draft or something? So do you translate it based on Spanish or English?
So both, I guess. I guess in the content itself, there was some, translation from Spanish to English needed to happen. If you watch the show here, you'll put probably some English subtitles or another language. So I'm not sure if they had to go through English to do the other languages. That's a good question. For the work that we do in terms of metadata or marketing, again, it will depend. Very often we go through English for a pivot language, whether it's Narcos or Brazilian original or Korean original or Japanese. We usually go through English as a pivot language. Our team, though, here will provide a lot of information about the content. So if it's a Japanese original, Yuka will probably watch the content and provide. I know that Carlos, you have been watching La Chica del Cable, the whole thing, thoroughly, and providing information, context to the other translators, telling them, okay, this is what's going on here, and this is why this episode is called this or that. So there's also interaction happening between the translators, between the languages, without necessarily going through English. But in terms of the translation, we very often go through English as a pivot language. Yes. Yeah, but we have
in general, but in that case, Las Chicas del Cable, we work with the people who are the copywriters in English. So we tell them what we think is relevant for our market. And in our case, we don't always translate. That is an important thing. We take it to our market. So in my case, it's not exactly the same that would be in Italy, or it's not the same because we have to adapt that synopsis actually to our market. So if it's an original of our language, like Ingobernable for Mexico, or for me, Las Chicas del Cable, actually I probably will not follow completely English, but I would have been helping the English writers to tell them what is important as well in that show. I have watched the show earlier than actually would be even writing the synopsis. So.
So just to add to that, we also have to, again, going back to this question about intent, sometimes we have to decide whether we want to translate, especially for Asian languages, whether we want to translate for titles, for instance, whether we want to transliterate the sounds or we want to translate the meanings, right? So for Chicas del Cable, we want to convey that these are phone operators, but if it's for Narcos or for Suburra, we want to say this is a proper noun, and maybe you should consider transliterating as opposed to translating the meaning itself.
Okay, one more question because we are now told that we need to get moving and go to dessert. There's dessert coming. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
So as a team that's that lightweight, again, you have a very small team and you have to rely a lot on vendors. The real question comes in then is terms of a business model. Are you considered a cost center? Are you a profit center? How do you partner internally with your teams? Do you have, when you're getting external content, do you rely upon your external content providers to do some of the heavy lifting? How do you structure this as a business?
Do you want to take it, Meredith?
I think Netflix is still young enough and small enough that we're not looking at it from the standpoint of a cost center in that manner. The globalization team is part of the digital supply chain organization, so they consider we're in the same organization that is gathering the content and bringing it all the way through to our users. So I'm not sure how to answer that, but
well, also I think, in terms of cost center versus profit generation, I think you've seen from the numbers we've shown you that the vast majority of the growth that we have is outside of the US and outside of English-speaking countries. So it's not too difficult to explain what we do, why what we do is important. And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of us came to work here as well.
Yes, and this is, at least in my experience, Netflix is one of the few companies where localization is definitely, localization is definitely considered an important part of the process of getting our products to users. They don't always know what we do. I'll be very clear. But they do definitely know that globalization is key to making Netflix successful. So I think that is a great benefit of working here.
So I'm sorry, we're going to have to cut it short. Before you go, we just have one last thing to show you. This is, so please, yeah. This is a brand new teaser that we have for new content. And today is 420, so this is really appropriate. And
enjoy.
Enjoy, yeah.
So high and so dry, I'm sailing in the sky. Just blow some gauge, I'm on a rampage. Jack, I'm melting.
Oh, and because I need to make sure that we see that one. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.